2001 marked the beginning of the Toei One Piece anime's third year on air. The series was close to reaching a major milestone from the manga, the Straw Hat Pirates entering the Grand Line. As episode 61 approached and the show's first filler arc came to a close in March of that year, the occasion was marked by the release of One Piece's second theatrical film, One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure. Much like its predecessor, Clockwork Island Adventure was released during Toei's Spring Anime Fair, Toei's bi-yearly event to showcase films based on selections of their properties. Also following suit was Digimon, with Clockwork Island being released as a double feature with Digimon Adventure Out 2, Revenge of Diaboromon. The two combined would end up grossing 3 billion yen. In 2001, that was the equivalent of $24.6 million. That's $43.6 million in today's money. The 3 billion yen also set a record for One Piece movies that would last for 8 years. I don't have the fondest opinion of this movie, so I have to assume it's because everyone wanted to watch the Jango short again. Jango's Dance Carnival is the first One Piece short to be paired with a theatrical release. It exists as a very loose adaptation of the Jango's Dance Paradise cover story, but really only in that they share the same basic premise of what if Jango wound up on Mirror Ball Island after Syrup Village. Dance Carnival is actually a very fun watch. It's only 5 minutes, so the plot is as simple as Jango is on the run from the Marines and forces the whole island to dance. The animation is very fluid, and the expressive faces on the characters are done really well. There's also a significant blend of 2D and 3D animation, giving the whole short a timelessly outdated style that I personally love. The whole thing is also really just an avenue to showcase a new single from the band Folder 5, who were the performers behind the second opening of the One Piece anime. And in that regard, I would say it accomplished its purpose as well as anything could, and it's definitely worth the 5-minute watch. As for Clockwork Island Adventure itself, the vastly oversimplified version of the plot is as follows. The Straw Hats are all relaxing on a beach at a resort island. The first One Piece movie takes place between the arcs anime was adapting when it was released, and presumably the same applies here with the movie existing in a post-Logtown pre-Grand Line state of limbo. Suddenly, the Mary is seen in the distance, sailing away with all the Straw Hats' clothes and gear on it. This forces our intrepid heroes to rent a bunch of wedding attire and a paddle swan, in which they spend the next week traversing the East Blue until they get scooped up by the thief brothers, Borod and Akis. The two have a grand plan to steal a diamond clock from Clockwork Island, right out from under the nose of a group of pirates who have taken over the island, the Trump siblings. Quick aside, in Japanese the word tarampu refers to Western-styled playing cards, derived from the playing card term trump. The most literal translation of their names would be the playing card siblings, but that's way too many syllables, so the best translation is the Trump siblings, despite the unfortunate modern connections to modern-day political figures. On cue, two of the Trump siblings and their accompanying fleet arrive. Meet Bojack and Honey Queen. Bojack is fully clothed, but Honey Queen is stark naked in the bath and also has a devil fruit. At the time, there weren't any official classifications of devil fruit, but her ability is the same kind as Smoker's, just with liquid. Another quick aside, Honey Queen's fruit is the Toro Toro no Mi, and the only official English translation has it as just the liquid fruit. Toro Toro is a Japanese onomatopoeia for syrupy liquids. Initially, I wanted to call it the syrup fruit, but due to the existence of a villain in a later movie, I think the best way to go about translating its name would be to something like the Goo Goo fruit, to get the same intended effect, and also because it sounds funny. Usopp single-handedly paddles the boat with tremendous speed, but Honey Queen and Bojack end up sinking it and kidnapping Nami to serve as a bride for their boss, Bear King. Nami is forced to endure the Trump siblings' company as the remaining Straw Hats make their way to the island and its defenses. Without their equipment, the traps leave them a little battered, so they go get a snack and some new clothes while Nami is held captive. On their way to the Trump siblings' base proper, Honey Queen and Bojack set out to stop them, interrupting a game of cards that Nami was winning. Nami also says Honey Queen can pay her losses with her body. We stan our lesbian queen. Sanji leaves to defend the Straw Hats but gets taken out by Bojack's spikes due to his bare feet. He also makes crude comments towards Bear King and gets literally crucified for it. When the rest of the gang make it to the front gates, they're able to fend off the fodder pirates until Skunk 1 descends onto the field with his, devil gas. Look, there's no way to ease you into what happens next, so just bear with me because it's Usopp fart inflation. Usopp is also crucified for Sanji's comments. The rest of the gang get caught in a trap inside, where Borod reveals that he's the one that stole the Mary and gave it to the Trump siblings, hoping that the Straw Hats would be the ones to beat them and free Clockwork Island. He leaves Zoro and Luffy to fend off the trap and decides to blow himself up to take out Bear King. He doesn't actually get to, doing it though. Zoro and Luffy have to fight Pin Joker, who nails Katanaless Zoro with a bunch of poison darts and kidnaps him, leaving Luffy alone in a death trap. Zoro also gets crucified. Bear King decides he wants to use the crucified crew and also Nami because she annoys him to test a new weapon that was delivered to him by the Hyena 3 from the first movie at an earlier point in this movie. They straight up name drop El Dorado and say Bear King is a better boss. A broken toy that Aki's fixed earlier tumbles its way down to Luffy and he gets a burst of strength when he remembers what he's fighting for and breaks the trap and all of the floors above him. And then he lights one of Borod's explosives and This accidentally frees all the crucified Straw Hats, and it's time for a set of rematches. Only this time, Usopp activates his latent Spider-Man powers and climbs up to the Mary to get everyone their equipment. Sanji effortlessly defeats Bojack's spikes with his steel-toed boots, Zoro pushes through the poison and beats Pin Joker, Usopp explodes Skunk One's ass, and Nami catches Honey Queen in an ordinary glass jar with some duct tape. Luffy and Bear King fight, with Luffy taking significant burning damage from Bear King's Devil Fruit, the Kachi Kachi no Mi. One last quick aside. Kachi Kachi is another onomatopoeia in the Japanese language. In this case, it refers to both the sound of two stones crashing together to make a spark and the sound of something hardening, hence why Bear King's power involves both hardening and heat. The Kachi Kachi no Mi has no official English translation, but if I had to localize it, personally I would call it the Flint Fruit, because Flint not only has a strong connection with fire, but is also fairly hard in its own right. But, you know, enter standard anime power of friendship, family, and a little kid taking a bullet for his brother. Luffy pushes through the pain of the heat, defeats Bear King with his own weapon, knocks down the entirety of Clockwork Island, you know, standard stuff. Aki's ends up reuniting with his real parents, a scientist couple with a minute of prior screen time, but decides to keep going on adventures with Borod, and everyone lives happily ever after. Clockwork Island Adventure, to me, is perfectly fine. I wouldn't call it good, but the scales don't tip far in the other direction either. If you just come to One Piece for the action set pieces and creative abilities, you'll enjoy Clockwork Island Adventure. If you come to One Piece for its stellar writing and intriguing exploration of themes, you'll probably still like the action. Being part of a double feature, Clockwork Island has a limited runtime of just 55 minutes. I'm not expecting Shakespeare out of those 55 minutes, but One Piece the movie already demonstrated that these movies are fully able to have stories that, while not groundbreaking, have a consistent narrative and thematic through line. I know that comparison is a cheap tactic to make weak criticism stronger, but in One Piece the movie, there was an underlying exploration of greed and lust for gold. It's why El Dorado was actually fairly effective as a villain, but Clockwork Island only lightly touches on its theme, that being the nature of family and the sacrifices one makes for those they care about. The way the movie goes about exploring this theme makes it more of a recurring motif than a consistent message. Borod sacrificed his hand sometime in the past to save Aki's. Usopp sacrifices his dignity to fend off Skunk One. Zoro sacrifices his well-being to stop Luffy from getting poisoned. Luffy fights the third-degree burns to beat Bear King. Aki sacrifices himself to save Borod, and later sacrifices a life with his biological family to stay with Borod, too. Aki's parents set him out to drift at sea to keep him safe from the Trump siblings. Sacrifice being the name of the game, Bear King falls flat at playing the heel. He's there purely to be a large obstacle that Luffy fights at the end. He doesn't do anything memorable outside of the first minute of his introduction, and his existence doesn't play into the theme at all. Yeah, he uses the crew that are dubbed his siblings to fight for him, but they all have a decent relationship, and he doesn't get the opportunity to do something like foregoing saving one of them for his own benefit only for it to come bite him in the ass as an example. Let's be clear here. Even though the windmill toy is what pushes him over the edge, it is the continued sacrifice of the Straw Hats' well-beings to save Nami that allows Luffy to push through the trap and save the day. The theme of familial sacrifice is explored through a positive lens and really just boils down to, if you're willing to protect the ones you love, they'll protect you back, which is a noble idea. I really just wish that it were explored more than a collective of moments that exist as a cheap way to give fight scenes more emotional weight. The fight scenes themselves, at least the ones in the climax, are actually really well done. As much as I say it was a cheap way to add emotion, seeing Sanji actually break all of Bojack's spikes once he gets his shoes back is a satisfying payoff to his bare feet getting spiked earlier. And Zoro's strength of will to fight through the poison that he was infected with, being born of a stubbornness to fight Mihawk again someday, is just a great choice. I wish I could have done without a reminder of Usopp impaling fart gas though. Clockwork Island Adventure was truly haunted by a devious specter, one that Usopp fart inflation was just a mere symptom of. Weird kink shit. To be fair, if we judge it by the standards of its time and intended audience, there's nothing absurd other than Honey Queen being introduced bare-ass to the sun. There's no way that the animation staff and director Atsuji Shimizu could have predicted that in the year 2024, someone inhaling farts to the point that they expand like a balloon would not be a humorous toilet gag, but instead something a portion of the internet that I wish I could unsee commissions art of to, slide the knot down the rope, if you catch my drift. Well, that, and they also show Sanji's bare, bloodied, and battered feet at, every given opportunity. And I'm sure someone out there has a kink for specifically redheads in wedding dresses. Also, Sanji rubs lotion on Nami's back, but that one's just kind of regular sexual. And actually, now that I think about it, slime girls aren't too unpopular nowadays either. The art style of the movie is a bit of a departure from the TV anime at the time. Nothing huge, just proportions being slightly altered in a way that most notably affects the layout of the characters' faces. The colors are also done slightly differently, albeit even though Clockwork Island was animated digitally instead of on cells, it was transferred to 35mm film for distribution. I don't know if that would affect the eventual DVD release that the copy of the movie I watched came from, but it could have, so I'm putting it out there. I also don't think that this altered style is bad per se, but it's definitely not my cup of tea, since I'm too used to how things look in the anime proper. Everything is so close to the same, but just different enough to land in the liminal space between normal and uncanny valley. I'm also not an animator, so take all of that with a grain of salt. Before I finish, I just want to point out a few random things that I couldn't quite figure out how else to fit into the script. The Trump siblings all have designs and names based on an animal and playing card. Bear King's pretty obvious, Honey Queen and Skunk 1 are also fairly self-evident, and Bojack is based on a pig. But Pin Joker was kinda hard to figure out. However, thanks to people smarter than me at the One Piece wiki, I know now that he's supposed to be a kiwi. Like the small flightless bird, kiwi. Also, his voice actor later went on to voice another bird-themed character, albeit a little more pink this time. The credits of the movie end with a preview of a bunch of characters from the then yet to be animated Alabasta saga, making this all of their debuts in the format of animation. Unlike the first movie, Clockwork Island Adventure doesn't start with the then current opening of the anime, Believe in Wonderland, or it might just be Believe. Instead, it features as the end credits theme. I like the little detail that after Aki's hat comes off, you can see that his hair texture is similar to his parents, who hadn't been formally revealed to be his parents, but it was all but explicitly stated by that point. Among the ships being held by the Trump siblings is a Baroque Works ship, which is another fun teaser for the Alabasta saga. Also a little less spoilery of a teaser than the credits are. My ultimate verdict on Clockwork Island Adventure is that it's perfectly serviceable and a fine movie to show One Piece fans, even if it's not the best movie in the world. I certainly wouldn't show it to anyone as a way to get them into One Piece, but if they've seen up to Arlong Park, it's pretty safe to show it to them. Honestly, it just exists as a 6 out of 10 average anime action flick. That's all I've got for this one, but if you want more, you can subscribe to get notified for when I release the next one of these Reedy reviews when I recover Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals. And if you aren't patient, you can get the gist of my thoughts by watching the portion of my full saga video on the Ace Blue, or you can watch my other Reedy reviews so far on the pre-Toei One Piece anime and the first movie. And if you're watching this within a few days of release, I'm either right at the tail end of the Water 7 saga here on my shorts tab, or I just finished it, so you got a whole plethora of shorts that you can watch if that's up your alley too.